Welcome into the Turn Golf Podcast. I'm Andrew Putters. Got my friend here, Joe Nicely from Rotoballer.com, here to break down DFS slate. First look at DraftKings for the Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill Country Club. First of all, Joe Nicely, how we doing this week? We got an elevated event, invitational event coming up. Felt pretty good last week on the restricted. We'll call it restricted field. Studs and duds is where we was at, but we didn't know which duds to pick from the litter. So I remiss if I say we are live on Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn, Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, Rumble, or listen to it on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, please like, subscribe, comment, share with friends. Joe, last week, Honda Classic, Chris Kurt, vet, wins in a crazy fashion. Did feel like it was kind of his to lose there coming down the stretch, all things being said. Pretty good finish. It's a shame the field. That's a good golf course to watch a tournament on. My team that was coming down the stretch, I texted you yesterday, was like 12 under on the front, 11 over on the back, 11 under on the front, 12 over on the back. That back nine's pretty brutal. A lot of double bogeys out there. So, but before we recap, let's talk about Rotoballer.com, what we got going on. We got some new people coming to the fold. Joe Nicely, Rotoballer.com. Break it down for us.
Yeah, AP, good to be talking with you, man. Excited for the Arnold Palmer. Really cool Honda event, as you mentioned. But we're looking ahead to Bay Hill and the Arnold Palmer Invitational, one of the biggest events on the schedule. So we hope you'll go over to rotoballer.com, check out all of our amazing content over there. Got loads of free stuff if you just want to check that out. If you want to step things up, we've got 3 different tiers of PGA Premium that we hope you'll consider. 3 different price points, 3 different packages. My man Spencer Aguiar is killing it. Byron, the Model Maniac, having a ton of fun with him this year. And Josh Bennett's doing the course breakdown. That's free now. So if nothing else, go over there and check out Josh's course breakdown of Bay Hill. That'll be up tomorrow. And we want to welcome a new member to our staff, Ian McNeil, who you can catch at Flag Hunting on Twitter. So go check Ian out. He's a really exciting young golf mind. He's going to be doing a lot of live betting stuff for us. So we just want to cover you from all angles over at rotoballer.com. So we hope you'll go over there and check us out, support our amazing staff, and enjoy our content and make some money this year. We're going to get things going this week at Bay Hill. And yeah, man, we had a really strong Honda AP, one of the most volatile tournaments on the schedule, and one of my better weeks so far this year. So that research kind of starts paying off. We're in this thing for the long haul. So some really good things coming out of the Honda. Looking forward to the entire Florida swing, and definitely, man, love this golf tournament. Always a soft spot for Bay Hill. And I know you feel the same way. So excited to get into it with you.
Yeah, let's real quick on the Honda. Anything surprised you last weekend? There's a couple of things that surprised me right off the bat. I was expecting Aaron Wise to pretty much have a walk. The way he strikes the golf ball, just really a walk-in top 20, top 10, and really struggled the first 2 days, and actually was very lucky to make the cut. I think hold out for eagle on number 1 the second day, and then chipped in on the last hole to make the cut. I was not surprised. One thing that I was not surprised on that, and I will write down for future reference, is when we play these courses that are on the coast, you're going to, usually later in the afternoon, you're always going to have more wind than you do in the morning. You're also going to have softer conditions in the morning. And as tough as those pins were, it played noticeably easier Saturday morning and Sunday morning than it did Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon. Therefore, you roster someone like a Johnny Vegas, who looks like, man, that's just really a waste pick. He ends up shooting 64 early on Sunday morning, really helping teams get pushed up the ladder on these DraftKings lineups. The same thing with Minwoo Lee, shoots 66 on Sunday. I'll be taking note of that in the future reference. These especially on the showdown stuff Saturday and Sunday morning. Big time advantage for instead of teeing off at between 8 and 9 o'clock and teeing off between say 11 and noon Eastern time. Huge advantage there, and we had some back end top 20s that way, and I don't know if it was pressure or what. I really didn't get to watch the last 6 holes, and honestly, the coverage was pretty terrible from that point on because the last 6 holes we saw two people hit every shot. That was it. But I didn't notice any terribly windy conditions other than hard, tougher pin placements. So I'm wondering if it was just more of the pins were tighter, and so these guys weren't going after the fat part of the greens or what on the back nine. Did you take anything from that? I don't know if you had any more of those observations than I did.
Yeah, I mean there were a couple takeaways, man. Very very minimal wind. I mean, probably as benign of conditions as we're ever going to see at the Honda. So that led to scoring that would be lower than I thought. Um, coming down the stretch, man, I watched a lot of it. It just really kind of turned into almost a match play situation. So there weren't really a lot of golf shots to show, honestly, as far as guys being in contention. Kind of down the stretch, the last 4 or 5 holes, it was pretty much a two-man race between Chris Kirk and Eric Cole, and a huge win for Chris Kirk, a guy we've talked about a lot on this podcast over the years. Was playing really well. If we kind of look at the trends, Kirk was certainly a guy heading in the right direction. This golf course definitely fits his game. Anytime we see these shorter, tighter tracks, Chris Kirk can really take advantage. So great to see him, man. He's been through some things in his life. So really cool to see him battle back from those struggles. We've talked about that on here before. So really cool to see him play well. Really cool to see Eric Kirk or Eric Cole, a guy that's a 34-year-old guy, I think, but it's kind of struggled with some injuries and some health issues, and kind of toiled away on the mini tours, and a really talented guy that got a shot and capitalized on it. So even though last week's field wasn't the type of field that we're going to see this week at Bay Hill, still really interesting golf tournament. Really fun to watch, and as you mentioned, PGA National is a really cool course for tournament golf. Uh, it adds some excitement as you're coming down the stretch. So a lot to like last week, man. A lot to take away from Honda. Unfortunately, that tournament's going to change next year. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but Jack Nicklaus was on the broadcast and said that he was assured that the tournament would still be played there. We just don't know where it'll be on the schedule and who will be sponsoring it, but it's definitely one we'll keep an eye out. Good way to kick off the Florida swing, and this week, man, the field really doesn't get any deeper outside of a major than what we're going to see this week at Bay Hill.
Yeah, it sounded like to me from the things that he was dropping, whether he was supposed to drop it or not, that and the PJ Tour might have already kind of whispered this out a little bit that there's going to be maybe 4 events a year that's going to be a moving elevated. So schedules are going to change from year to year. Fields are going to change from year to year based on that, the prize money, obviously, and the points. And I think there might be something now in the contract if you're in the top 30 and you're qualified to play in these elevated, you're forced to play in these elevated events. So kind of like this week, right? 44 of the top 50 players in the world. So let's move right on in, Joe. Get our feet wet. Arnold Palmer Invitational, like I said, it's going to be played at the Bay Hill Bay Hill Club and Lodge in Orlando, Florida. Bermuda greens again, like we saw last week, Bermuda collars, but ryegrass everywhere else throughout. This course architected by Dick Wilson, 1961, renovated by Mr. Palmer in 2009. Very historic event from the standpoint of obviously the host, Arnold Palmer being the host for a number of years now, and year in year out, even before all this elevation, PGA Live war, it's always kind of had a good field. Therefore, seems like a ball strikers wins here a lot and competes here a lot. And let's be honest, big golf course, big hitters, right? Par 72, I left this out, par 72, 74, almost 7,500 yards long. So yeah, big hitters. This is a big ballpark, right? Um,
Yeah.
uh, Not really similar to anything we see, but anywhere else. But we can say big ballpark, big hitters. So um, we got to think the big boys are going to be at the top of the leaderboard, right? So we'll start 10K and above. Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm. Those are the big boys when we talk about hitting it long. But other people can compete. So if we're in this top three range, and you're going to have to pay up quite a bit for them, right? John Rahm, 11.5, where Max Homa's at 9.7, who's the fourth person on the board. So are we going to basically risk it, right? In these top three, Joe, where are you at on here?
Yeah, man. It's as you mentioned, this feels stacked. Top of the board is of course loaded, and it kind of stays that way as we move on down the salary scale. So there's a lot of ways we can go this week. Do want to say, AP, before we kind of dive into the salary scale, that we're doing this on Monday night, putting it out live. But for people rewatching, things things could really change this week based on weather. And it's not always something that I'm going to give a lot of weight to, but kind of with the forecast right now, we mentioned how benign it was last week at Honda. We're expecting some big time wind for this golf tournament this week. It looks like Friday and Saturday are going to be the two heavy days. Obviously, that can change, but as of right now, we're looking at gusts up over 30 miles an hour on Friday and over 20 miles an hour on Saturday, and it's something we've seen affect the outcome of this golf tournament in the past. So I would just say before we get in the salary scale, keep an eye on the weather throughout the week. I think it's going to play a factor, and you might want to target maybe lean towards guys that you've seen play well in windy conditions in the past. Multiple guys like that up here at the top. John Rahm, his salary's huge. Doesn't have an extensive history in this event. Had a T17 in the start last year. But that's about it for Bay Hill. That being said, we know, you know, the type of form he's shown. He's on an absolute roll right now from tee to green. Has no weaknesses to his game. We know that he loves these big ballparks. Something I'll be looking at this week, AP, is kind of major championship records. How do these guys handle these bigger, tougher golf courses, such as Bay Hill's kind of going to play this week? We know Rom's played really well in the majors. Same can be said for the top three guys really. Scotty Scheffler won the Masters last year, won this event last year. He's a defending champion. We've already seen him defend one title this year, a couple of weeks ago in Phoenix. And he's played beautifully this year, getting the one win. But he's been in the mix multiple times, playing extremely well from tee to green. Just needs a good putter, and he's a very good Bermuda putter. Had multiple wins on Bermuda surfaces in his young career, so you have to love both those guys. Rory McIlroy is certainly a course horse. Um, Not great results in the U.S. this year. Won his first start of the year internationally, but hadn't had great results in the U.S. this year. But that's all due to cold putting. Rory has actually been phenomenal from tee to green in both his U.S. starts this year. Just hadn't been able to get any putts to fall. We could see that change this week on a Bay Hill golf course where he's played really well. He won this event in 2018. He's had three more top 10s since that win at Bay Hill. He loves this golf course. Rory's a student of the game, loves the history. So I feel like I'm spending a lot of time, man, just on these guys above 10K. So I apologize, AP, but um, these are three serious threats to win this event.
Yeah, I agree with that. The one concern obviously would be that Rahm doesn't have a lot of history here. Scheffler, defending champion. Rory has year in, year out, very good. I mean, I think last year I was pretty much set on there's no question at all that he was going to win, and obviously did not come to fruition. But I, I'm fine with playing any of these guys, but I'm also fine with playing none of them too, if that makes any sense at all. There's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of talent in this, like we said, in this field, and a lot of money right here to be made in this 9K range, which we can go ahead and move on to. I would say that honestly, I'm probably snagging Rory at the top if you force me to pick one of them. 9K range, like I said, Vic Hovland, yeah, Vic Hovland, uh, Patrick Cantlay, Xander, Tony, Willie Z, Morikawa, JT, Helma. Morikawa's had a lot of success this year. We have not seen him been successful in the windy conditions overall, though. And this course makes a lot of sense for him, other than he doesn't hit it very far, but he is a pure ball striker. So really, we can make a case for any of these guys here in the 9K range. Um, and I can't really have one stand out from the other. I'll probably have to go back to some course history here to even find anybody in the 9K range, which is really not easy to find that has had major success in the other than maybe a Vic Hovland tied for second last year. Max Homa's basically a top 25 every time he teed it up here. Makes a lot of sense because if you hit it pretty well overall, you're going to do fairly well here, and that's what he does. Let's be honest, man. He's really moving up the ladder as top echelon golfer on tour. So 9K range, Joe. Um, without diving deep in here, I don't know who to go with. I could see any of these guys having a ton of success. I think some of them have a lower floors, but all of them have pretty high ceilings here. And we're still waiting for JT just to break loose, right, and win at a
Yeah.
consistent rate. So 9K range, Joe. Anything right off the bat stands out?
Yeah, man. You hit on a lot there, and I agree with most of what you said, man. It's one of those type of events, and it's such quality depth of talent that you can't go. You're not going to go wrong with any of these guys. It's basically just finding angles and maybe picking out a couple favorites that you really like. I'll hit on three guys that stand out to me maybe more than the others. Number one's Max Homa. We know how well he's playing. He won at Torrey earlier this year, right in the mix, stood toe to toe with John Rahm at Riviera, had the runner up finish there, and man, he's just playing some really good golf. AP, it seems like maybe kind of the only thing that was holding him back from being a top 10, top 5 player in the world was believing in himself, and it feels like he's starting to do that. Um, we target Max on the West Coast. Won 4 of his 6 PGA Tour victories have come in the state of California. But I think his game's ready to travel, man. He's played well in this event. Played it 3 times, a T24, a T10, and a T17. So he can certainly handle this Bay Hill layout. We've seen him play well in difficult conditions when he won the Wells Fargo a couple years ago. If you remember, that's when they played it at Potomac, and that was an absolute grind. So I like him in tough conditions, and I like him on tough golf courses. Um, I'll mention JT just because he's kind of an unknown. No track record here to speak of. So we know he can turn it on at any time. We know he has every shot in the book. We've seen him play well on multiple occasions in heavy wind conditions. The Players last year, the PGA last year. We've seen JT overcome kind of difficult tee time draws in difficult conditions. So I like JT, even though the course history isn't there. And then Willie Z. Really liked what I saw at Riviera. We know how he plays in major championships. He's got a T10 on his resume here a couple years ago. Had a T38 last year. And he's playing really well. So, I like the form. I like Will Zalatoris' ability from tee to green to kind of handle these long golf courses and these long approach shots like you'll see this week. So,
Yeah,
circling those three.
and here's the thing too. There's 8 players in the 9K range, Joe. We might be looking at what you're talking about. Follow a little closely to the weather later on the week. 4 of them, let's say 3 of them play in the afternoon on Friday. 5 of them play in the morning. You might just scratch those 3 in the afternoon just at a pure principle, and just say, hey, I'm cutting my losses here, taking these 5 in the morning, circling those. I'm gonna roster them as much as I can, and maybe catch lightning in the bottle, right? Or maybe catch some low ownership on those 5. That's probably a strategy you can look at. I'm just throwing some ideas out there.
Yeah, sure.
Uh,
I think it's very viable to kind of stack, maybe make some tea time stacks, and some AM PM or PM AM wave stacks this week. I mean, I think that's definitely a strategy that's out there on the table, especially right now, kind of seeing what we're seeing with the wind. It might be one of those weeks where we just try to take some shots with stacks, simply just based on tee times. Find guys you like that are playing a certain time of day and go with it.
Right. Let's move on to AK range. My man Cashmere Keith. See if his. Just the guy makes a ton of sense right here, Joe. But we'll get to that. Sam Burns, Matsuyama, Hatton, Tom Kim, Jason Day, Jordan Spieth, Cam Young, Fitzpatrick, who seems to be just an absolute stud on this place. Let's be honest. Fitzpatrick, courses he likes, he has success at year in, year out. He might be the resident course guy on about any course that he has success at. And Sunjay M at 8,900. A lot of question marks and a lot of possibilities here. Is Jason Day, are we getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here on Jason Day? Is Jordan Spieth probably priced right, but feels weird being at 8,600? And golly, when's Hideki going to come back, Joe? It seems like
Yeah.
ever since we started talking about the neck injury last year, it's been the same thing every week. The guy makes a ton of sense. He's fairly priced or even below price where we think he should be on very hard golf courses. And literally, coming down the stretch of Riviera, 2 shots in front of the cut, shoots 3 over in the last 6 holes, misses the cut, breaks Andrew Porter's heart for the weekend. Yeah, 8K range got a lot of questions marks. Saw a little thing, little something on the Cam Young today. Nothing really in particular that statistically stuck out, but golly, I'm ready to see some more Cam Young good playing because he's fun to watch when he's on because he hits the ball so good. So, Joe, 8K range, answer some of these questions for me. Cashmere Keith makes so much sense, other than he makes so much sense at 8,000.
Yeah, I love Cashmere Keith this week, man. I think we're going to have to keep an eye on his ownership because I do think he'll be popular. Playing extremely good golf, man. We know what type of form he's bringing in. Played really well at Riviera, and he's played well at this tournament. Had a T5 and a T6 back to back here in 2019 and 2020. We know that Bermuda's his best surface. He's been absolutely amazing off the tee. So love Keith Mitchell at 8K if we want to start at the bottom. Um, I'm kind of circling him depending on ownership, man. I mean, it might be a cash game single entry type play this week. If he's going to get all this steam that we're kind of thinking. You work your way up. You mentioned Hideki. I would almost put Hideki and Sam Burns in that same bucket of you just don't really know what you're going to get out of these guys right now. We know they're talented. We know, yeah, hey, would we be super surprised if either one of those guys won this week? No. But the recent form and kind of the extended track record isn't great as of late with either of those two. Burns has popped a couple times this year, but man, I just never seem to get that guy right. But we know how well he plays on Bermuda. So he's a guy you got to consider. Terrell Hatton, the former winner of this event, had a runner up here last year, so the course history is definitely there. He can handle windy conditions. When the going gets tough, that's when Hatton kind of gets going. So this is obviously a golf course he likes. There's a lot of golf courses on the PGA Tour schedule that he doesn't like, but this is one that he does appreciate. So Hatton's in play. You mentioned J Day, former winner here. He's been really, really good this year, man. This price tag is tough. They priced Day really aggressively at 8,500. But you're talking about a guy coming in T7, a fifth, and a T9 in his last 3 starts. And this was against tough fields, man, not cupcakes. I mean, we're talking about the Farmers at Torrey, the Waste Management, and then the Genesis at Riv, popping those results against those type of fields. But Disney World is close, so we got to kind of wait and see on Jason Day. You mentioned Cameron Young. He just feels very, very dangerous sitting there at 8,700. We know what he's capable of. Hadn't really busted out yet this year, coming off a T20 at Riv. Did play well over in Saudi. Had a runner-up finish over in the Saudi International. But we haven't seen kind of what we were hoping to see out of Cam Young yet. But this is the type of golf course that he can certainly do his thing, man. He's very, very long, an excellent iron player. So Cameron Young's interesting. And then you mentioned Matty Fitz. The course history is amazing. Had a runner up here back in 2019, and he's finished in the top 10 every single year since. So he likes Bay Hill. He likes playing in tough conditions. I remember last year, things got really, really tough on Saturday, and Fitz was the only player in the field that didn't make a bogey. So that's the type of thing. He won the U.S. Open last year. So that's the type of environment that we want to grab Fitzy. The only problem is that the iron play has been really, really bad, man. Lost strokes on approach in every start this year. So Fitz is kind of one of those where you're betting on his pedigree, you're betting on the course history, but the recent form hadn't been great. So really interesting range, man. Kind of like all of them this week. Honestly, there's a lot of ways you can go. You can make a lot of arguments for a lot of guys here.
Right, right. Moving on down the 7K range, Joe, and what you say every week, the value range where it can make and break you on DraftKings. Um, Shane Lowry obviously sticks out at 7,900. Uh, Played very solidly last week to I think a top five finish. 7,900. Corey Connors makes a ton of sense. We haven't really seen much of him this year yet. Billy Horschel really surprised me last week, Joe. Thought that we were going to see him do kind of what Shane Lowry did. Comes out, shoots 65 in the opening round. Had a horrific time just hitting really bad golf shots at real unopportune times. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, honestly. Mainly Friday and Sunday. I mean, I can't remember him hitting it in the water from the middle of the fairway from 150 yards in a long time. Then he followed that up with a pull hook out of bounds on the very next hole.
Yeah,
It was really, really wild to see. And I think obviously that has a lot to do with some of the swing changes and just not being be able to dive right into that new swing thought that he has. But moving on, uh, Keegan and Adam Scott have had major success here in the past year in year out. Cannot forget Chris Kirk. Won last week. Has probably the second or third best course history in the last 5 years coming into this week. Justin Rose really, really showed me a lot in the Pro Am this year. However, and Riviera makes a ton of sense for him, and did the same thing Matsuyama did, bogey three of the last six holes, including one shank in there that I got to see live, which was really disgusting. So I'm not really sure of where we're at on Justin Rose. Fleetwood, good ball striker, doesn't hit it very far. Moving on down, Seamus Power makes a lot of sense here, but his ownership might be pretty high. Woodland, big ballpark player. Tom Hoagie, Nick Taylor, ball strikers. Aaron Wise, ball striker, 7,200. Ton of players down here in the low sevens. Um, and there was one, Sep Striker, Ben on right here at the end of the 7K range. Ben has been made some flashes here, I think, in the last few weeks. I know you brought him up last week, has shown some form back, down his tour card back, showing some form. I think at Pebble and here, Pebble and at the Honda last week, was pretty decently up the leaderboard and faded away on Sunday when the conditions got, or the pin placements got a little bit tougher. But I think we're pretty close on him being possibly a top 10, top 20 player, or excuse me, top 30, top 20 player in some events that we can see because he hits the ball very well. So if you can find him at a good price in the future, like this park right here at 7K, makes a ton of sense. So 7K, the value range, Joe. And I know I touched on about 8 golfers there, but um, yeah, go through there, dissect a little bit. Tell me
yeah,
what you think.
man. Everybody's so everybody's so good this week. AP, it's hard not to just guys because you feel like you want to kind of touch on them, you want to talk about them a little bit because there's so many good players in this field, and there's a lot of guys coming in with very good recent form. um I kind of want to go to Ricky Fowler, and he's in that Jason Day mold, and that he's a veteran, a guy that we know was talented, that kind of hit the skids a little bit, fell on really hard times, but seems to be heading back in the right direction. So I think you can put Ricky Fowler in that Jason Day bucket, at a much cheaper price tag. Love Chris Kirk. You know, did we just go right back to the well this week, AP? As you mentioned, the form's been great. The course history is amazing. Had a T5 in this event last year, T8 the year before that. Hadn't finished outside the top 15 in this event in his last four Bay Hill starts. So there's a lot to like with Chris Kirk. If you're not afraid to just kind of hang on the week after a win, I keep waiting on Corey Connors this year. It hasn't happened yet. This could be a breakout spot. Had a third here in 2021 and a T11 last year. Saw it. The Gallus played well, missed the cut in his only API start last year. But if you start looking at Sauce game log, a lot to like. Um, the veterans you mentioned, Keegan Bradley, Adam Scott, Justin Rose, they all know how to handle these golf courses, know how to get around these big ballparks. Believe it or not, Keegan might be my favorite of those three. Couple top 11s here in his last two starts. Had a runner up earlier in the year at Torrey. So I think there's a lot to like with Keegan. Tommy Fleetwood's a player I like. He's coming off his best outing year at Genesis. And he's played well at this golf course. Really solid track record at Bay Hill. T3 here in 2019, a T10 2 years ago. Another one of those guys that had a rough kind of coming out of COVID 2020, 2021. Tommy really fell on hard times, but he battled back, had to put together a good season last year, and I expect some good things for him this year. So, really like Tommy Fleetwood there in the mid sevens. As you mentioned, a lot of options as we go down to the bottom of the sevens, but I don't know of these guys who we're trusting. But it's guys we're willing to play, especially GPP type stuff. Christian Bezadenhout is a guy that I really like on difficult golf courses. He's played this event 3 times, has 3 top 20s. So he's a guy I'm circling. Minwoo Lee, you mentioned, is a really talented player. Might want to try to ride the hot hand with him. He missed the cut last year in his Bay Hill debut. But you have to love the form. And then if we're talking course history, just kind of a guy hanging around there sneakily at the bottom of the 7Ks, Bo Hostler, a couple top 25s in his last two Arnold Palmer starts, and he's shown some form this year. So, ton of ways you can go, man. I don't know that I'm all in on any of these guys, but it feels like a mix and match week for GPPs.
Yeah, value play. Never know how good the value is till it comes in, right? So 6K range though, Joe. Right off the top here, I was big on Svensson and Taylor Pendrith last week, and we're looking pretty decent. Svensson came back with like a 65 or 66 on Friday, and 66 or 67 on Saturday, and I was feeling pretty good, and followed up with about a 73, I think, on Sunday. Taylor had some water balls coming in, but I had a pretty good weekend. So in 6K range, I still like. I'm big on Pendrith this week. Um, I'm ready to put Cam Davis back in that little box and let's just ship him out to sea for a little while until they show us something. And last but not least, and down here in the 6K range, which I'm gonna go ahead and throw out my dart play of the week, Joe. Lingworth went T10 last week. Ball striking is really, really good, and I'm really excited about where he's going to be. And we're getting him at a great price at 6,200. Makes a ton of sense on this golf course. No golf course is too long or too tight for that guy when he's hitting the ball good. So David Lingmerth, 6,200, dart play of the week. Go ahead and throw that out now. Joe, what do you think about the 6K range?
Actually, I'm kind of excited about the 6K range this week, AP. I think there's some very playable options down here. Yes, they're a bit risky. Yes, they don't have the kind of the name recognition that we see at the top of the board and even in the 7Ks. But there's a lot of talent down here. A few guys that we haven't seen in a few weeks. But there's some talented players and guys that I feel can handle this type of golf course. Um, I'll just start out with, kind of some of my regular guys, man. And this is just where I'm looking purely at talent versus price, and guys that have the ability to handle this course. I'll throw out Davis Thompson at 6,800, a young guy that we saw pop earlier in the year. He's kind of went quiet. We know that's normal for young players, especially their first kind of time around the PGA Tour. He did play in this event last year, had a T42, made the cut. So he's a little familiar with Bay Hill, and he's a really talented player. So Davis Thompson's the one I like. A player that I really liked last week and had a bunch of exposure to, Ben Griffin. at 6,700. This will be his first start, but he's playing really well. He's handling himself beautifully in his rookie year on the PGA Tour so far. Another player that we really like, AP, kind of saw him pop up again last week. Had some really nice rounds there Friday and Saturday. Is Davis Riley. I think this kid's uber talented, and it's just crazy to me that he's here at 6,600. I get it because of how good this field is, but he's a really talented player. Same can be said for Garrett Kigo, who's kind of popped out of his shell a little bit. I think you can look at him, and then I'll throw out kind of some of our usuals: Hayden Buckley, Ben Taylor, Will Gordon. Um, I mean, these guys are playable this week, especially in GPPs. And I'm gonna circle back around to my boy, who I called out as my dart last week. He's down at 6,100 this week. AP Pearson Cootie. This kid can play. He was uneven last week at the Honda, but I think he kind of showed what he's capable of doing. The dude can light it up when he gets going. So Pearson Cootie 6,100 is one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, we was, we were chatting a little bit Thursday night. We both look like mad scientists Thursday night,
Yeah,
and then
yeah, we were looking
by
pretty
Sunday
smart.
we were homeless and begging for change, loose change. So, but yeah, yeah, he played well. It was pretty wild. That was a pretty good story there with him and his brother, and everything going on with him. Like I said, last week was pretty fun, regardless of the field. And be honest, with these elevated events, it's been like the same 6-10 guys we're talking about every week, and so the regular events is we're going to see some names that we haven't seen in a while, or new names that give more opportunity. But anyway, that's beside the fact. Joe, who do you think is going to win this week? That's the real question.
Man, it's so tough. I mean, it's almost like a major. This thing could go a bunch of different ways. I want to kind of go. I mean, you gotta love Rahm and Scheffler. These guys up the top, but I'm gonna go to the old school, a little bit older school, and go with Rory. It's where my heart's leading me this week. I mean, you look at the ball striking numbers, man. Everything's there. He's just really struggled with the putter. He's familiar with Bay Hill, knows this golf course well, knows these greens well. The track record's phenomenal, and I think he's going to kind of toss his hat in the ring with John Rahm and Scotty Scheffler, and kind of remind these guys, hey, I'm here too. So I'm shouting out Rory up at the top. What about you, man? What's your heart telling you? Who's going to win this thing this week?
Man, I'll be honest. I think. I mean, obviously, tee times is going to matter and the weather, right? So we could
Sure.
get a bad
Yeah. I
call on the
mean,
weather.
yeah,
Yeah,
I feel like that goes without saying.
yeah, it could go completely out the
It's going to be a
window.
big factor.
But I think I cannot believe I'm saying this. I think Will Zalatoris gets his first win this week, and
I like it.
makes sense with Mr. Palmer there, or Mr. Palmer's tournament,
I
and
like
the
it.
history there.
Yeah, he
Uh,
played on the Arnold Palmer scholarship at Wake
yeah,
Forest. AP there's a lot of connection there. I like that call a lot.
and you're going to get a pretty decent price on that, right? As far as if you are dabble in that, so that's kind of where I'm at, and I think he gets it done this week. Especially we have tough conditions back to back days. I mean, it's one of them years like right you see. Now we might get some rain too, which could soften it up for Sunday, but could be one of them years where like 7 under wins and third place is 4 under, or third place is even par, right? Which
Yeah,
anyway, we just don't know yet. We don't know what the conditions are going to be, but yeah, I think Will Zalatoris gets the win. That's just where I'm at. That's where my heart's leading me. So
I like it. I like it.
that that being said, Joe, catching up.
Yeah, man.
Uh,
Nice talking to you. I just want to kind of harp on the fact a little bit that this weather is something we're going to keep an eye on all week. So, would encourage people to check out rotoballer.com throughout the week. Our guys are on it, man. they eat, sleep, and breathe these PGA Tour events, especially these big ones like this. So stay posted. Follow us on Twitter. Visit the site, and we'll keep you as up to date as possible on the weather situation this week.
That's right. Rotoballer.com, presenting sponsor. Use the promo code TURN when signing up for the premium stuff. Thank you, Rotoballer.com, for everything you do for us. Best place in the world for your daily fantasy needs. He's Joe Nicely. I'm Andrew Putters. We're talking Arnold Palmer Invitational. You listen to the Turn Golf Podcast brought to you by Rotoballer.com.